So we have a new major heel stable that formed last night on AEW Dynamite on TNT. Now last night on Dynamite, that rhymes, the Inner Circle had a War Council meeting on TNT after having a tough showing at Sunday's AEW Revolution pay-per-view. Chris Jericho said that there were some changes that were coming to be made to the group and that would make the group stronger. As the group discussed what to do next, Sammy Guevara, the Spanish God, showed up on Dynamite last night to reveal a video of MJF telling the likes of Jake Hager, Santana and Ortiz it's time to remove Le Champion from the leadership role of the Inner Circle. Now in the ring, MJF told the guys to get Chris Jericho, but they ended up siding with Chris Jericho, who then kicked MJF out of the group. Now MJF then revealed that he'd been building a group of his own the whole time, and the lights went out when they came up. His group included FTR, Wardlow, Shawn Spears and Tully Blanchard. The new stable completely destroyed the Inner Circle with weapons, handcuffing Santana and Ortiz and powerbombing Chris Jericho off the stage to close out the show. So we have, I guess, is this the version of the Four Horsemen that we've thought were coming or has been teased the last couple of weeks? Look, when it comes to stables in AEW, I think, I mentioned this before, they've got a certain pattern that they're going towards when it comes to the booking of just talent in general when it comes to AEW. First of all, I think the reason that they have so many stables is because they're following the sort of New Japan philosophy. If you watch New Japan or Japanese wrestling, it kind of mirrors and parallels the world of MMA. In the sense that everyone's got their own camp, everyone belongs to their own stable or their own training regime and all that kind of stuff, and AEW's kind of following the same pattern of that, and I like that. I like it. I think it, as mentioned, I think it reflects real life, I think it reflects the world of MMA, and I think that everyone kind of belongs to their own tribe, and that's very sort of human nature, isn't it? So I like that. And last week when we had FTR and Tully Blanchard facing off against Jurassic Express, and we had JJ Zillin out there, and then we had Shawn Spears being revealed as a person that was going to be involved in this faction. I enjoyed that. I don't know if I enjoyed that just because it was a throwback, because obviously you had JJ Dillon, you had Tully Blanchard, you had Tully wearing the old US Championship, and you had FTR wearing the old NWA World Tag Team Championships. It was a massive throwback to Jim Crockett promotion days and the Four Horsemen involved there, and Arn Anderson came out as well and gave the Four Horsemen signal as well, and that was a lot of fun. And I don't know if I just enjoyed that because it was a throwback. I think so. It was a nice bit of nostalgia. When it comes to this new group, look, I thought the segment itself was good. I thought the segment itself was fun. I thought the powerbomb spot with Jericho going off the stage, I thought was great. I think Wardlow has so much potential. And I know I think a lot of people have drawn this parallel when it comes to Wardlow and MJF. I think eventually, and I say eventually because I think it's quite far in the future at this point, but eventually I see Wardlow and MJF having a Triple H and Batista moment. You know, sometimes the way that MJF talks to Wardlow, sometimes the way that MJF addresses Wardlow, it's kind of like that Triple H Batista vibe. And one day, maybe it's a case of Wardlow winning a casino battle royale or a ladder match or whatever to get a future opportunity at a world championship. And maybe at that time, MJF is the world champion. And then you can kind of do an AEW version of the angle where Triple H is telling Batista, no, go to SmackDown, you don't want to face me, all that kind of stuff, and then he gives the thumbs up and the thumbs down, because I think Wardlow can just be a massive star. I mean, he's got such a great look. His first ever match he had in AEW was against Cody Rhodes in that steel cage match last year, which was fantastic. So that's a lot of potential there. Now, when it comes to, I want to talk about Shawn Spears actually first, before I talk about the group. Shawn Spears, no disrespect to him, he's a great worker. I was a fan of him as Ty Dillinger for that brief period in WWE, because for a period of time, for the whole 10 stuff in NXT and then it transferred over to SmackDown, he was over to an extent. I think people thought he was going to be a good mid-card talent. At this point, and I want to choose my words carefully here because I want to completely bury the guy, but I just have no interest whatsoever in anything Shawn Spears does. And I know that might come across as disrespectful, but he just feels like a man of a million gimmicks in AEW so far. You know what I mean? And the only reason people do that, and the only reason that people try all of these different gimmicks and all this kind of stuff, is because something isn't working. Something's missing, and they're trying to find it. I mean, honestly, how many gimmicks has this guy had? He comes in as the Cody Rhodes' best friend, the babyface, hits Cody Rhodes over the head with the steel chair. When they tried to bring back chair shots to the head, which is ludicrous. I don't care. Well, we gimmick the chair. It's still dangerous. You can get a concussion off the mildest blow to the head, so that's ridiculous. But so then he's the chairman, right? Because he hit someone with a chair. He's the chairman. That's the gimmick. He hits people with chairs. He's the chairman. He comes out sitting in a chair, right, with the spotlight and all that kind of stuff. He's the chairman. And eventually he loses to Cody Rhodes, and then he's got nothing. Again, he's got no gimmick. He's still the chairman, and no one really cares, frankly. So then he moves on to a different gimmick. Bear in mind, actually, before he moved on to the different gimmick, do you remember at Double or Nothing last year when it was the whole, he took out Dustin Rhodes and he was still getting revenge on the Rhodes family, and then he had the match against Dustin Rhodes at Double or Nothing, and then in the worst kind of comedy spot, Ric Flair spoof, I don't know, the match he was stripped off to his underwear, and the underwear had a picture of Tully Blanchard on it. You can't tell me if that was WWE and they did something like that, they would get just slaughtered. Absolutely slaughtered for doing that. And people forget about that pretty quickly, and a bad thing. I mean, I wish I forgot about it quickly. I'm disappointed in myself that I just remembered it now. But they did that. So then after that, Tully Blanchard's really angry with him. You're letting people down. Where's your fire? All that kind of stuff. So they go back to another gimmick. Yes, he has another gimmick. This time the gimmick is the old, the black glove. And they put the slug in the black glove. And it's kind of reminiscent of Ted DiBiase and the Blackjacks and putting on the black glove and putting the foreign object in the black glove because it worked in like the 70s and the 80s. So maybe it will work in the 21st century. I mean, I'm not going to go against it. I mean, I was willing to give it an opportunity. I thought the initial promo from Tully Blanchard when he's dressing down Shawn Spears is fantastic. Go and watch it. And he has the black glove, and again, it's nothing. It's just a gimmick. He doesn't make the gimmick work. He has the gimmick, and he just appears on Dark a lot, and does the whole black glove and hits people over the head, and then Tully Blanchard takes it away from him. Oh, great. Great. And again, then he goes away again, says that he's done with professional wrestling, and the reason he goes away because the gimmick doesn't work. He goes away again, and then last week he's revealed as this mystery attacker, this mystery photographer at ringside that assists FTR and Tully Blanchard defeating the Jurassic Express. But this time, the new gimmick is he's dyed his hair. Yes, he's bleached his mohawk. He's got a blonde mohawk this time. And at this point, and again, no disrespect to Shawn Spears, which I know would seem ironic considering I've just slaughtered it for 5 minutes, but when are you going to give it up? When are you going to give up trying these different gimmicks and trying to force people into this position, all this kind of stuff? Maybe this is the right thing for Shawn Spears. Maybe being as part of a faction and being the bump guy and being a guy that, if there's anyone in that group that is going to take defeats, it's going to be Shawn Spears. I mean, that's just what it's going to be. FTR isn't going to do many jobs. MJF doesn't do jobs. I mean, he really doesn't do single jobs. Has he even lost? I mean, he lost to Jon Moxley, wasn't it? That's his only singles defeat. Wardlow shouldn't be doing jobs because he's the muscle. If there's anyone that you would look at that faction and say there might be a bit of a weak link there, no disrespect, I know I've said that a million times, but it would be Shawn Spears. Maybe that's his whole purpose of being in that group at this point, is that he's a somewhat recognizable name and he can take the falls for that team. It hardly doesn't seem in keeping with a supergroup, does it? But I guess he's a client of Tully Blanchard, so that makes sense. In terms of another faction, look, again, I don't have a problem with it. I like the idea of MJF being the leader of a new version of the Horsemen. It's going to be interesting to see how Arn Anderson factors into that, because every time FTR have been involved, and Arn Anderson did come out last week, didn't he? And when FTR were deciding who their manager was going to be, and there were certain managers scouting FTR to try and get their services and all that kind of stuff, it was Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson. Now, of course, Tully and Arn, famous tag team as well. So, absolutely, we possibly could see a situation in the future where Arn actually leaves the Nightmare family and comes over to this stable. What you do have to remember is that whole MJF Cody Rhodes feud is pretty unresolved. I mean, honestly, it's pretty unresolved, isn't it? I mean, they had the match at Revolution last year, and they never revisited it. They never really revisited it after that. They didn't. Cody Rhodes moved on to the whole TNT Championship deal, and since then, MJF and Cody Rhodes haven't really crossed paths since. When Cody Rhodes was trying to address MJF and continue the feud, that's when Jake the Snake Roberts made his AEW debut, and then Lance Archer became a thing, and then the whole TNT Championship tournament became a thing as well. So Cody Rhodes and MJF certainly have unfinished business when it comes to their storyline, and maybe it's a case of MJF being the head of his own group, having Tully Blanchard, having FTR behind him, and then eventually Arn Anderson rejoins the modern version of the Four Horsemen, and that actually brings Cody and MJF once again back together, and they can have another feud, another match, and I guess then Cody can get his win back, considering that MJF defeated him at Revolution last year, and it wasn't really addressed after that. Just thinking about it, it's crazy that was 12 months ago, that was a year ago. man, doesn't it feel like a million years ago? Because I remember coming out of Revolution as well. That's when I said Jake Roberts made his debut, and that was in front of a live crowd of people. So, look, it's certainly interesting. Where does this lead to? Well, I would obviously think that Double or Nothing is coming up in May, so we're building to some form. I don't know what this new stable will be called. I don't think it's going to be called the Horsemen or anything like that. It'll probably have maybe some sort of a play on that. I think it's probably going to be leading to a match between the Inner Circle and this new faction at Double or Nothing in May. What will that match be? I think there's a couple of options that AEW has. Of course, a year or so ago at Double or Nothing, which was at Daly's place, of course, you had the TIAA Bank Field Stadium behind him, didn't it, of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and that had the Stadium Stampede at the time. You had the Elite versus the Inner Circle, one of the real fantastic cinematic matches last year. It was a lot of fun. Did they do that again? I don't know if they will, because the reason I say I don't know if they will, because obviously come May we might have a bit of a different situation when it comes to fans being able to attend. I mean, at Revolution on Sunday, AEW had their largest audience that they've had during the pandemic. I think they had around 1,300 fans in attendance there. So would they do the Stadium Stampede again, but with fans in attendance? I don't think so. Maybe they might actually hold Double or Nothing in the stadium. Maybe they might do their first stadium show. I mean, we've seen when it comes to, say, WrestleMania at Raymond James Stadium, and when we've seen with the Super Bowl at Raymond James Stadium as well, that you can have obviously a larger amount of people there because it's a bigger stadium, and you can still have it at 25 or 30% capacity and still deck it out that way. And obviously, AEW wouldn't have to pay any fees to actually renting the stadium for the night because the Khans own it. So maybe Double or Nothing will be at the stadium there. I don't know, once again, if that means with the Stadium Stampede, if they can actually do that, because the whole point of the Stadium Stampede is that it was an empty stadium match and they brawled all over the stadium and they really made the most of that. I don't know if they can do that with fans in attendance, set up and all that kind of stuff. So maybe that kind of rules out the Stadium Stampede. The other match I was thinking, though, is the Blood and Guts match, right? The Blood and Guts match was the forgotten match because of the pandemic. We were going to have, where was it going to be? It was going to be in New Jersey. I think it was going to be in New Jersey. It was going to be around March 3rd or something like that. It's pretty much like 12 months ago, nearly to the day. And the match was going to be the Elite versus the Inner Circle. It was going to be Blood and Guts. It was a playoff Vince McMahon calling AEW, All Elite Wrestling, a Blood and Guts promotion. And essentially, it was War Games. It was going to be AEW's version of War Games. Obviously, they can't call it War Games, and they can't refer to it as anything like that. But it was going to be AEW's version of War Games. It was going to be 2 cages, 2 rings, in a similar sort of sense as War Games. But they were going to call it a Blood and Guts, or Blood and Guts match, or just Blood and Guts. I think the event itself was going to be called Blood and Guts. It was a version of Dynamite on TNT, and that's what they were going to call it. And obviously, because of the pandemic, they were going to have the show in Rochester, New York, which was going to be the debut of Brody Lee and Matt Hardy. And then the following week, it was going to be the Blood and Guts match in New Jersey. And obviously, those matches, that didn't happen because of the pandemic. And essentially, I think the plan was, when it came to the postponement, is they said, you know what, we don't necessarily feel comfortable doing that kind of a match in the early stages of the pandemic. Of course, it wasn't right to have big crowds and big groups of people at one period of time, and the pandemic was out of control and people didn't know a lot about it. Was it right to be doing a match that involved lots of blood and having potentially like 10 people in the ring at the same time? Was that really a good look in the early stages of the pandemic? So they said, you know what, we'll postpone it, we'll come back to it. And then over time, the whole Elite Inner Circle rivalry ended. I mean, it ended really at Double or Nothing in the Stadium Stampede match. So they've still got that match, and they still do have the structure. The Young Bucks have spoken about that structure, said, look, it was really expensive to build. It's been built. We just haven't been able to use it yet because we don't know when to use it or the right time to use it. And I guess now you've got 2 factions facing off against each other once more. You've got this new faction and the Inner Circle. I guess it would make total sense for Double or Nothing to be the debut of the Blood and Guts match. So I think that's likely what we're going to get here. I think we're going to get this new stable, whatever they're going to be called, the new Horsemen, whatever, versus the Inner Circle. And I think it's going to be a Blood and Guts match at Double or Nothing. So that's going to be certainly exciting. I mean, the way that this Double or Nothing card is shaping up at the moment, Blood and Guts, possibly Christian Cage versus Kenny Omega, Sting versus Lance Archer, Cody. I mean, I think Cody's facing Pentagon Jr. next week, isn't he? But there's certainly lots of really exciting stuff there. So if that's the match they're going towards, I'm looking forward to it. But of course, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on the new stable forming last night on AEW Dynamite? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW. WWE, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below, all opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube, go up the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.